Arrive at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue.
Let's go back. Back in the time. Back in 73, in the borough of Bronx. Man, you couldn't be weak. Man, you had to be smart. See, we talking about streets. Now we talking about art. When we talking about beats, man, we talking about heart. We was rocking the heartbeat, live in the park. Guns spark in the dark. It was all just a part of the 80s Bronx scene that created art. How you know, KRS? Cause I was there from the start. 1600 Sedgwick Avenue, that was the spot. 1520, hip-hop started right on my block. This original hip-hop, whether you like it or not. I'm reminding through this rhyming cause you might have forgot. Drop on the spot, B-boy, start pop. Live on the block, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, grab writers don't stop. Bottom to the top, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, MCs make it hot. Microphone rock, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, DJs on the chop. Cut, mix, scratch, this is raw. See, when we would begin, they brought the heroin in. They was really determined that we was never gonna win. But by looking within, we began to believe that we was breakers and writers, chasing MCs. We was so damn poor, we was eating free cheese. But that made us raw, we started eating MCs. Just before the fees and the MTVs. When you walked in New York and your ears would freeze. Walla beats and leads, mock necks and tees, nylon BVDs. We was fucking with these, we was fucking with this, we was fucking with that. But when the 80s came in, we started fucking with crack. And along with the crack came a big old gap. And along with the gap came a big old stack. Cause if you ain't had that, you was the next to get jacked. This the way that it was, I'm just taking it back. Drop on the spot, B-boy, start pop. Live on the block, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, grab writers don't stop. Bottom to the top, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, MCs make it hot. Microphone rock, this is raw hip. Hop, drop on the spot, DJs on the chop. Cut, mix, scratch, this is raw. This the way that it was, this the way that it went. Man, you had to survive, card note with the red. When the 90s arrived, 80s money was spent. All them dudes who was live, to the prison they went. And them dudes that survived, they began to repent. Then they realized in rap, there was money to get. So gangsters became rappers, rappers became gangsters. Fake became the real for the paper.
Peace and much love, and welcome to the Temple of Hip Hop. I am Minister Sun One, and here is our teacher, the Blast Master, KRS-ONE.
Yes, indeed. In Jersey right now, doing it way big in Jersey. As you can see, I'm in a hotel room here, and it is wonderful. The day is going so great. I hope everyone in the sound of my voice is as happy as I am today, or really for this entire week. It's a great day to be alive. Feel the energy, feel the vibe, feel the beat. If there's anything you'd like to open up with, Minister Sun One, now is your chance because I have a lot to go over.
Okay. I just want to say peace and much love to everybody. Today is the Queen Leilani's birthday. Peace and much love to her. It's going down. And we're going to do something real big tonight. So there it is.
Wow. Wow. So as you can see, I need a haircut. But I'm coming to you raw and raw, like I say, raw bone like a razor. I just might face you. Get it right, boy. Maybe I will blaze you. Playing the role, I got soul too. Voice fine point, my opinion with volume. Smooth, that's what I am. Rough, cause I'm a man. These things are in my actual head. This is hip hop, y'all. Welcome to the Temple of Hip Hop. I am KRS-ONE. The Temple of Hip Hop, as you know, started in 1996. With the affirmation, rap is something we do, hip hop is something we live. We went on to proclaim that we are not just doing hip hop, we are hip hop. And then, of course, the revelation, I am hip hop. This is exactly what we about. This is exactly what this mission is about. So, like I always say, don't get it confused. No, that's fine. Don't get it confused. This is not religion. This is not science. This is philosophy, which is the mother of them both. So realize where you are. You're at the Temple of Hip Hop right now, and we are exploring hip hop. We are teaching hip hop. We're not talking about, the exploits of rappers and DJs and so on. There's millions of books, DVDs, and you can go to everybody's website and see what everybody did and so on. But here at the Temple of Hip Hop, we're concerned with hip hop, not anyone's particular contributions to it. So we don't get involved in the rhetoric, the debates, and some good debates. When did hip hop begin? When did it start? Where was it? Who started it? Is it really 73? Or is it 72? Or is it 68? Who really did what? These are the debates, and they're good for intellectual stimulation. But when you want to get to the truth has nothing to do with that. The truth has to do with what part of knowledge is going to empower you. If I tell you my name, is it going to help you? If I tell you that I'm the greatest MC in the world, what does that do for you? Oh, so now you know that KRS started, anything to stop the violence movement. Okay, so what? That doesn't give you anything. Knowledge is all about imparting empowerment to the other person. That what I'm going to tell you or show you is going to make you more. It's going to mature you. You're going to go from A to B. You're going to go from 1 to 2. You're going to grow based on what it is that I'm saying to you. So I make this distinction at the top of our study today because, there is a lot of debate about hip. There's always has been a debate about hip hop start and so on. And let me also add and say that the founders of hip hop also have changed dates, lied about their name, postured and puffed up stories. And now that the evidence is coming out, a lot of dudes have found, the information is finding out to not have been true, or somebody left out a piece. Also, now that we're getting older, many of the original pioneers of hip hop are realizing, oh my God, I did something in life. I should proclaim it. And now they're proclaiming it, rightfully so. But now that's changing the history, because you didn't say that 20 years ago. You didn't say that 10 years ago. You didn't say that 30 years ago. All the movements went by, all the conferences were had, all the universities were talking, books were written, documentaries done. Where were you? Where were you? Hiding out in the back somewhere, not really caring or whatever, or unconscious of who you were, whatever it was. Where were you for 30 years? So now we come into consciousness. And now dudes is claiming, but that claim is changing the history. Those claims, which are true claims, a lot of these claims are true claims. They say, I did this, and I'm responsible for that. And these are true claims. But these true claims also change the history, which is why the Temple of Hip Hop teaches all the time that we're not concerned with objects, people, their stories, and this, that, and the other. We can all write that down. And like I said, I have a huge library of a whole bunch of people's stories. I refer to them when necessary. But what we are really here about is to preserve hip hop. You have to preserve the hip hopper. Okay? Not the objects that hip hop produces, not even the knowledge that hip hop produces, but the people that hip hop produces. This is what we are preserving. Without us, hip hop does not manifest in the world. Imagine that. When you show up, hip hop shows up. And when you're gone, hip hop's gone, unless someone else who is hip hop remains or enters the environment. But if you're the only one that is hip hop in the environments in which you enter, imagine that you're the only one. You're the manifestation of hip hop in your environment. So how do you manifest that? How do you really manifest that seriously? Is hip hop really part of your life? Really? Or do you just like the rap? Or you just let it get a little money and move on? Well, these are the questions that the Temple of Hip Hop asks. And I'm saying this again because we are teachers on this line, and this is what we're learning. We're learning how to teach hip hop, and we're reading our gospel through and through, front to back, to study and learn how to correctly teach hip hop. And we're learning and teaching in real time, meaning that we could see right now how people are stumbling themselves in their own scholarship by not being able to get to the cause of a thing, or not being able to differentiate between what is fake and what is real, or what is right and what is wrong, or emotions versus logic and reason. You know, these things, people are getting caught up. And that's why we teach philosophy. That's why we teach philosophy, philosophy, love of wisdom, love of truth, pursuit of wisdom. So we are pursuing knowledge and truth and wisdom within hip hop. We pull the knowledge and truth and wisdom out of hip hop with hip hop's own language. That's what the gospel of hip hop is all about. We're talking about us, but in a timeless fashion. Love is timeless. Peace, love, unity, and joy is timeless. That's before hip hop and after hip hop. But we could speak about these principles through the language of hip hop. We're moving forward. I want to shout Mayor Eric Adams of New York. Big up to Mayor Eric Adams of New York, the hip hop mayor. They're trying to clobber him right now with these, with our other brothers and sisters coming from Guatemala and from South America, and all of these people, these racist idiots down in Texas or wherever, are sending migrants to New York. And New York is taking them in. It's upsetting the city. I ain't gonna front. Resources are being, the city had to maneuver this and come up with millions of dollars to do this. They set up a little spot in Randall's Island, all this type of stuff like that. But shout out to Mayor Eric Adams for receiving these refugees, what am I talking about, refugees? Receiving our brothers and sisters, I should put it that way. Because what's the difference between a migrant and a refugee? What? Where do you draw the line on that? These are our brothers and sisters looking for a new life. And let me say why I'm also bringing that up and shout to Eric Adams is because this is the salient issue of the day. Homelessness, people traveling from one place to another to find better living for themselves. The issue of a hip hop city is upon us right now. The prophecy is true. And it is true because not only when we came up with the idea of a hip hop city, none of these issues were the issue. No problems, no COVID. There was none of that. I mean, homelessness was always the case, but not like the epidemic that it is today. It got worse, obviously, over a 10, 15, 20-year period. We started talking about a hip hop city back in the 90s. At the turn, at the top of the 21st century, 2000, right after the United Nations, when we declared hip hop an international culture there at the United Nations, we started thinking about, well, where's the safe space for hip hop? Where do we go that is hip hop? You can refer to your gospel where Kool Herc actually said, matter of fact, you know what, let's just go there real quick. Where in the gospel, Kool Herc points out that there needs to be a place that is hip hop, and this is I'm on page 526 I'm on page 526 of the Gospel of Hip Hop. 526. Okay? And I'm on paragraph 175. Just want to read you this real quick. 175, paragraph 175 on page 526. We highlight this as well. This is a highlight. I'm going to start from 175 and read down. So if we're talking about serious, a political, if we talk about serious, a political move, a social move, an economic move, then hip hop as an industry, as a forum, needs to also be about the political and economic and social organization of our people. This is a brother X talking. I'm looking for his name. But he had an X on the end of his name. But he was talking. This is what he was talking about. Now it says if it's not about that, it's talking yin yang. That's it. And then it was an applause. Now Hurt. And then the father of hip hop, Cool DJ Hurt, spoke saying, "Yo, check this out. Right now, the bottom line is about money, all right? Money going here, and here, and it ain't concentrated in one place for hip-hop to build this, to build what the other brother was talking about, political, social move, economic move." Hurt was like, that's dope, but if you ain't got no money, all that, you're just talking at the end of the day. 177. We need, the gentleman's name was X-Man, by the way, X-Man. We continue, Hurt now, and this too was highlighted. We need somewhere a hip-hop complex itself, a large place that every artist who comes to New York, who somebody will have to come through there and perform. And that money goes somewhere for us for whatever we want to do with it. It's about money. It's about money and what hip hop money can do for community and for us political wise. It's a force. It just hasn't been harnessed yet, all right? And we trying to bring that shit under one fucking roof. That's all it is. We need somewhere that is hip hop with a big fucking parking lot, so the police ain't gotta come on horseback and chase us out of every fucking place where you can get in, end quote. That was Cool DJ Hurt in 1994 at our meeting of the Minds meeting at the Schomburg Center Schomburg Center for Black Studies on 135th Street in Harlem. We met there, convened there, and this is, you know, and you know the story with the why that's even in the gospel. But we marked that down because this is what we are following. This is what the Temple of Hip Hop is following. We're not just making stuff up and saying, because I want this, this is what it's going to be. That ain't how you lead movements, and that ain't even how you start nations. A nation is not started with one person. A nation is started with a group of people agreeing on something. So when we got together in that room at the Schomburg Center, we all began to agree that this form of hip hop is what we're going to be building. This is what we're going to stick with, and this is the story's going to be. And KRS-ONE was appointed the scribe, so to speak, the historian, because I was always documenting our meetings from way back, from '87, really. I was always showing up with a recorder, showing up with a pad and pen, and taking everybody's name and number, okay? People remember me from years ago, okay? But now in this meeting, which was that we produced, I also took notes from a different angle, of course, but I really wanted to get this right, that in this sacred space, what we say is going to be the prophecy. We're going to set our agenda in spirit, soul, mind, and body. We're going to tell the universe what we want, not a government. We're going to tell God what we want, not a record company or some industry. And that's what we did in 1994. So now the work to make the prophecy true, the consistency and the concentration to stay on mission while people are throwing things at you, dissing you publicly, while people are slandering your name, while others who claim to be with you lied. Others got the story wrong. Others posturing with self-interest. All of this going on, and we still have to maintain the focus. We did. That's why we are called a temple for hip-hop. Because first and foremost, we are the temples for hip-hop. Your character is going to determine whether you are a member of our society or not. Your character. Is it about peace, love, unity, and safely having fun? Is it about health, love, awareness, and wealth? If you're not with that, you're not with us. Sorry, respectful. But let's be clear with what it is. Hip-hop is not everything. Hip-hop is this. It is specific. So others wanted it to be any and everything. We didn't want that. We said we want it to be specific because we know we're going to teach our children this. We're going to bring this to the next generation. We're going to make this a repeatable science. We're going to open our schools. Matter of fact, our ministry, archive, school, and society. That's what we are here to do. Others can talk, and others did talk respectfully. It seemed like every time KRS-ONE said something, somebody else was saying, yeah, I'm going to do it too. But they were not ordained to do it. Of course, some people I even tried to help. I even tried to help. You will notice in the 1994 meeting, there was a discrepancy over who first came up with the term museum, hip-hop museum. That was at our meeting in 94. Okay, that's in our meeting. Sister Jacqueline Hines jumped up. I had the idea first before anybody. That was documented in history because everybody was there and nobody refuted her either. Nobody said, no, you didn't. Nah, it was like, in fact, Crazy Legs kind of confirmed it by saying, I heard of you, but I didn't know who you was. So in that, okay, we're spewing word out, okay? Everybody else can take this not serious. That's not what we're here to do. We take this very serious. So now the prophecy. It was said back in 94. We're coming up on 2024. Guess what's going to happen in 2024? You don't see this yet? You don't say, let me try to give you some sort of a visual of this, okay? First and foremost, we said this in 94. In 94, even though hip hop started in the Bronx and in New York, nobody, government-wise, was interested in hip hop. Forget it, okay? In fact, we were coming off of a war against hip hop. Ministers and reverends, hip hop ministers and civil rights organizations were dissing hip hop. Other genres of music, rock, jazz, dissing hip hop. R&B too. This is what was going on. Okay. When we I got to bring the prophecy to you. So this is what's going on in 94. And I'm not even doing a good job explaining. You can't imagine what hip hop was in 94. It was nowhere. It was on Friday and Saturday night on the radio. That was our big deal. Friday, Saturday night radio, your MTV Raps, Rap City. And if you didn't come through these channels, there was nothing, you was not being heard. Now there were clubs, and you could be heard in the club, but then you was regional, and that was the end of it. If you didn't get a record deal, you were not heard. Period. Government officials were not coming to our concerts. No, they were not. 1994, hip hop had nothing. Now, we was a global culture in 94. We was big, I ain't gonna front. We was rocking, no doubt. As a culture, as a community, hip hop was huge. But not in government, not in the halls of power. No. We was the opposite. All of those government programs and laws and 3 strikes you're out and war against drugs and all that, that was against us. Try to remember. But God is God. Try to remember. We saw then the prophecy. This ain't gonna last. These people are corrupt. They're not gonna last. Only the righteous last. Okay, so they're going to be out of here. What's going to happen to our people when these companies begin to fall? When we knew that no one could ever imagine that the Source magazine would not be in existence anymore, or Double XL, or Billboard magazine, or Rolling Stone magazine, Spin magazine. These were huge publications that defined music at the time. You had to be on a Billboard chart in order for you to be recognized as something. We saw then, and I put it in record too, just to stick them, okay? I put it on record, okay? These plaques are worthless. They give you a gold plaque, and it's not even real gold. They spray a record with gold. I give it to you. And you like, I have a platinum plaque. They sprayed it with silver. And they, I have a platinum plaque. And we're good with these sales awards, Grammy, a little man, Oscar, or somebody holding a Golden Globe. We running for this? Why they taking billions out the culture? You can't see that. Nope. Matter of fact, Chris, you think you all that. You preaching again. You did it. That's what 94 was. The crystal, remember? The ice, remember? The yacht. You remember? Well, that's why the history is here. That's why the priesthood is here. So to remind you, God is not to be mocked at all. Now the prophecy. When we said all that, none of it was possible. But we did see that these people ain't gonna last because they raping the culture. And I told them this. Now here we are, speed up. Now it's 2024. It's 2022, we're going into 2023. But now it's 2024. From 94 to 2024. Now we're here. Now we're here. Now we can see the results of our knowledge too. We all preached a whole lot of stuff back in the days, but today we could see the results of what we are preaching and what we have preached. God will not be mocked. I started off by shouting Mayor Eric Adams, New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And I'm just shouting him because of his work with the migrants on that level, bringing our brothers and sisters forward, at least setting up a tent, something to eat, some medical supplies. That's more than what Texas governors are doing to these people, human beings. I mean, fuck your immigration, really. This is kids and mothers and fathers and people. You have no work for them, right? No education for them, right? Nothing. Just get out my country. And your ancestors came here the same. That's just straight evil. And you got to call it for what it is. So shout out Eric Adams and all mayors that are taking in human beings and giving them what they need to see another day. And also, what I'm hearing also, reports are coming in that the people that he's sending, that these other governors are sending to what they call sanctuary cities, these are people who have already been processed by the U.S. government. They're already processed. They're already here. They're waiting for this or that. The government know they're here, got all information, but you ain't a citizen, so get out. That's that old school racism. Like, that's old school right there. And we see it prevalent right now. So what is the response, though? What is the response? The response is first knowledge and awareness. This is the response. Do you know who you are? Because if you don't know who you are, you can't fight. You have no confidence in who you are. If you don't know you're a rapper, you won't rap. If you don't know that you're divine, you won't fight for righteousness. Either you'll be afraid of it, afraid of the fight, or you won't see it. Here at the Temple of Hip Hop, we teach divinity. That's not religion. That's not science. That's an entirely different reality that is real and true, and we show it with evidence, precedence, and proof. 1994, we put a prophecy forward. The recognized father of hip hop said, we need a place that is hip hop. The master teacher then went on and said, well, let's go get that place. Started organizing. 1996, we opened our Temple of Hip Hop. And back in 94, we started writing the gospel of hip hop with the permission of everyone in the room. 1996, we opened the Temple of Hip Hop. 1998, we held our first census and established Hip Hop Appreciation Week. 2000, we're at the United Nations. And then we promoted the Declaration of Peace over a 20-year period. Handed it out, promoted it, discussed it, lectured it, whatever. Because it took that long for our people to wake up. Now our people are waking up. We can reveal now another veil. We can show you something different now. But back in 2000, right after 2000, the Temple of Hip Hop, our members who were awake and aware already knew. What is the plan, teacher? What is the plan? The teacher responds, here's the plan. Herc said, we need a place that is hip hop. I'm going to call that place Hip-Hopia. And it's a city. And there's a temple of hip hop in this area, and surrounding it is our city. This is the place that is hip hop. And we're going to pray to our God for this, not to a music industry. We're going to affirm this with our minds, not with money. You're not here. You're not seeing it. We're operating in a different economy. This is the divine economy. Now, here comes Mayor Eric Adams. I'm a hip hop mayor. What? Yeah, I'm a hip hop mayor. In fact, I'll meet you at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue on the 49th birthday and come down and I'll be there out of my schedule. I got to be there. I am the hip hop mayor. Dude shows up. Cuts the cake. You saw it. This is what it was. Afterwards, we discussed, and I can't get into this because I'm in a public forum, but I'll give you the highlights, okay? We discussed the prophecy. We discussed the prophecy. In fact, Mayor Eric Adams brought up the fact, and I brought this up before, that he was one of the program with graffiti writers through the sanitation department, that he says the city is giving millions of dollars to private companies to get graffiti off the wall. Why don't we give our kids a space for graffiti and then give them the money to clean up the city of the old graffiti? I thought it was brilliant. Absolutely. We have a committee going to them. MC Light was hanging out with Mayor Eric Adams and called me while she was hanging. And she said, what you want me to say to dude? I said, yo, the same thing I said to his chief of staff. We need a committee that can advise the mayor on hip hop in the city. We need to advise the mayor on hip hop in the city. We want a committee that he recognizes as a New York City committee on hip hop. And you will take our phone call and you will take our advice on hip hop and our guidance on hip hop. MC Light brought it to them. They already heard it already. Simone already been talking to what's this guy you talk to with Mayor Eric Adams' office?
Oh, Chris.
Chris,
yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Chris.
So anyway, so this guy Chris, who's like chief of staff there, so on. They already know, so they know what we doing, and they know what the prophecy is. That ain't enough though. Before him, it was Ross Baraka, the honorable mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Ross Baraka, Raka. This dude, we sat down and discussed the prophecy. And he took it in and said, I got this spot called Weekway. And Weekway is an area that we want to restore. He said, you could take that for hip-hopia. We went in a police escort. We got the whole thing on film, you know. We went in a police escort around the city of Newark until we got to this area, Weekway, or Week Chick, something like this. But it's called Weekway is what they call it. But when you look it up, the original Native American name was Week Chick or something like that.
Hold on. It's Weekway Chick. Weekway Chick.
Weekway Chick. Now let's get that right because hip-hopia may be right there. Weekway Chick. Thank you for that. So this area, Weekway Chick, okay, which the mayor is calling Weekway, which everybody calls Weekway, really. Weekway Chick. He said, that's hip-hopia. He said, that's hip-hopia. We could set up there. Took me to a place called 55 Ludlow, which is a building built by the federal government, built by the United States government as a recreation center for the people in the neighborhood. It's called a Trek Center because training, recreation, education center. He said, you want that? The Temple of Hip Hop is this. Start paying that rent. It's you. I said, what? Start pulling out. Now we're in negotiation to have our temple erected there in Newark, New Jersey. Full buildings. The building's a block long. Temple of Hip Hop right there, Newark, New Jersey. And the area that it's in is in Weekway, which is hip-hopia itself. Now, we're still talking and we're still in negotiation, but this is what we're talking about. And we've been talking about this for about a year now. He had to get reelected. You know, shout out to Dupree Kelly, do it all for Lords of the Underground. That's the councilman now, okay? That's now making it also happen. He's a councilman. He's also knows the vision and trying to make it happen. Do you see what's happening? Okay, maybe you don't see it. Let me hit you with one more. So I did a show the other day in Philly. Shout out to Philadelphia. We got busy in Philly. In fact, let me shout out, wait a minute, Karstoffen, right? Vic Karstoffen. And I have to look at his name. I know I call him Vic, but Vic Karstoffen. Vic Karstoffen. That's the mayor of Camden, New Jersey. So I was in Philly, okay? Mayor rolls up on me. Yo, Chris. We like in the hood somewhere, okay? He's like, yo, I'm hearing about the programs. I'm hearing about what's going. How can I be down? What's going on? We in the back of my dressing room with the mayor of Camden, New Jersey. Okay, another city in New Jersey, a smaller, way smaller city. Actually, the city is only 9 miles long, or 9 miles long, and has 80,000 residents. I threw the prophecy on them. Hip-hopia. Can we say Camden hip-hopia? He said, Chris, whatever you want to do, we gonna get it done. I'm like, yo, we was hugging and seeing the vision, and his chief of staff was there as well. Others were in the room seeing the vision. And I said to the mayor, the mayor of Camden, Vic, I said, yo, our children have nothing, okay? This is where I start my pitch. I say, yo, Live Nation and these other agencies have bought up all the performance spaces in the United States. There's nowhere to go if you're an artist that simply want to play the flute, play the clarinet. You got a band, you hitting your guitar. Where do you go to get some bread? Where do you go to express your art, even just to practice before a crowd and perfect your skill? I believe that hip hop, being the #1 urban art in the world, not just in America, but the world, we have a responsibility to every other art that is part of art. If we are the #1, if we are the leaders in art, imagine, just think about that for a minute, that our culture is the leader in art. Do you not understand what I'm saying? Our culture, what we call hip hop, okay, is what everybody wants to do, and is what more than half the planet is doing. In some shape, form, or whatever, the planet is engaged in hip hop. The planet, all of humanity, we don't take this in the way we supposed to. And that's why many of us feel depowered as well. You got to see the truth. This is the truth. #1 art form, we have a responsibility there. We have a responsibility. And that's what I brought up to the unions, the AFM, the American Federation of Musicians. That's what I'm bringing up to SAG-AFTRA. That's what I'm bringing up. Get off your asses. Where is the space for art in the city? Everybody's scratching their head. So I take it to the mayors, and council people and senators. Shout out to Chuck Schumer too, by the way. To the senators and say, yo, we need you to open spaces for us, land, so that we can have us a hip hop space. Now, of course, you know the story. When I went to Mayor Ras Baraka, I said, yo, the pitch was everything I just said, and the example was, just like you have Chinatown and Little Italy and Little Greece and Korea, whatever it is. And in Brooklyn, like I said, they have Caribbean town or something like that, something with Caribbean on it. But the cities, urban cities, big cities are known, especially multicultural cities, are known for having sections of the city dedicated to a popular culture in the city. So you concentrate this culture right here in this space, so everyone can enjoy the culture from its original point of view. The culture gets to express itself. It doesn't have to compete with other cultures in a multicultural environment. That's not how you get to explain yourself. You get to respect yourself and other cultures in a multicultural environment. But when it's time to explain yourself, you got to come away into your environment. This is my environment. It's my clothes, my speech. It's what we eat. It's how we do it. So every city has a section where, there's even a Jewish sections as well. You can go get food, this, that, and the other. You can slip into the synagogue. They don't care. And so I'm just saying there's sections there, okay? Where's hip hop section? The dominant culture in the entire city, okay? Where's our section? As Kool Herc prophesied, where is the place that is hip hop? Where is it? Well, that's what the prophecy is. Here's one of our major visions. And I'm hitting you with it to remind you not only of what we are here for and what we're trying to do, but also how great God is. How great God is. Capital G, capital O, capital D. How great God is. Here we are. We're not the richest hip hoppers at all. We don't strive for that. There's no bling on my neck. Well, actually, maybe there is. I got a little Wakanda beads. I don't know. But whatever. That's about it for me, okay? We're not running around with billions in the bank. What we have is God and our ancestors. And this is what people are gravitating toward: the kings, the queens, the mayors, the senators, the presidents. They respond to the truth. That's why they're in the positions they're in. It's not all corruption. You know it is, but it's not all that. You got to have some brain to be there. You got to have something to be the mayor, to be a senator, to be a congressman, a congresswoman, to lead people in any regard. You got to know something, or you're going to get tripped up, and many do. So keep in mind what we're doing. Hip-hopia is coming. It's going to be real. Hip-hopia is coming, and it's going to be real. In fact, tomorrow, I'm going to meet with Mitty, a friend or family, but also the chief of staff for Mayor Ras Baraka. His chief of staff, a dude named Mitty, actually is his brother, Mitty. We're going to meet tomorrow in the morning and walk through 55 Ludlow tomorrow. And I'm going to look at the building, look at what it is, look at the cost of it, look at what we got to come up with, look at this kind of thing, take measurements, this kind of thing as well, and also survey the area. I have another show tomorrow. I have a show tonight with Cypress Hill tonight in New York. It's already sold out. It's crazy. We over by the pier. It's going to be savagery in that building. And then tomorrow I run up to Boston. But just before I go up for the Boston show, I'm going to survey what could be the new temple of hip hop in Newark, New Jersey, in the area that we can call hip-hopia. I'm going to be there tomorrow. And so I mentioned the mayor, Vic Karstoffen, because he too said, yo, as small as Camden, New Jersey is, we could just name that hip-hopia. They have space, land, whatever we want to set up. It's there. It's there. They got money. They got budget. And when the mayor and the political officials want something to happen, suddenly the money appears. The grants appear. The sponsorships and corporate this and that appears. The mayor is trying to get his 80,000 people galvanized. He sees this as a great opportunity, and it is. And it is. Hip-hopia is supposed to be franchised across the globe. A little hip-hop in every major city. Brings jobs to our people, centralizes the tourism, people having a good time, a crimeless society. Come on. This is what we moving toward. And this is the mission of the Temple of Hip Hop. So having said all of that, let me shout out Special Ed. And let me also shout out Vanessa Gibson, a Bronx Borough president, Vanessa Gibson. She just dropped $2 million onto a public school so it can have arts. $2 million, just dropped it on the school, out the budget, so that this school can have art. It's a major school in the Bronx. You can't do it with all the schools, but if you can do it with one and let other schools come, this is what they working with, because they ain't got no money either. You know, as far as cities are concerned, the Bronx, needs money. So they mustered up and scraped up $2 million to put art back into schools. Look at what's going on. Look at what's happening. People are trying to do something. Don't keep looking at the news and say nobody cares. Nobody's doing nothing. All these politicians are corrupt. they're never going to see my way of it. That's not true. That's not true. The truth is that people are corrupt. And a person's character will show you who they are. A tree is known by its fruit. What fruit are you bearing? What did you do? I didn't do anything. I was in office this time. I didn't do nothing. Wow, well, now we see. Oh, yeah, I was in their office and I tried to put this proposal forward. I tried to do this. They got blocked over here, but I went around here. They got stopped here, but I talked to this man over here. And now we're doing this over here. Who's moving? Who's working? Who's really doing something and not just talking? Well, that's called the Temple of Hip Hop. Big up the Special Ed. Got on a call with him the other day. We was at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx the day before yesterday. We was in 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, the birthplace, the home of hip hop. We were there, obviously. We were getting the stories down of the building 1520. You guys should know, excuse me, 2023, 50th anniversary of hip hop. We're putting forward an exhibit called Hip Hop 50 Years. It's an online exhibit as well as, and we're going to put the actual exhibit at 1520 Community Center. We're going to put the history of 1520 and the Community Center on the wall of the actual Community Center there and the outside foyer area. We're going to turn it into an exhibit and raise money for the building and the tenants in the building. Having said that, I was there the other day, myself, Son One, G. Simone, Time, Journey, we were all there. And we were there with, and now get the angle of the story, okay? We're not talking about Kool Herc and Cindy. We have that story already. There's some other little details we're going to add that's a little tweaky. But what we're actually talking about is the history of 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. This is a unique angle that only we can tell this story because we are 1520. We are 1520. The Temple of Hip Hop is 1520. The building association, the owner of the building, all of these people are down with us. And so we were there, called them up. They opened the building up immediately, the community center. Said, yo, whatever we need to do, we just do there at 1520. So we said, let's get Pebbly Pooh. Let's get DJ Jerry. These are people who were there when Herc was playing. Actually, Pebbly Pooh wasn't. Actually, Pebbly Pooh was there, but she comes later. We always say Herc is 73, 72, 73. Actually, 73. Pebbly Pooh was like 75, 76. But she was still, relevant when Herc was relevant. So we dragged Pebbly Pooh and put her in the hot seat. DJ Jerry D, who was actually there and could tell you the actual history. And the Building Association president, Miss Gloria Robinson, and Miss Geraldine Davies, and a couple other people as well was able to sit down. Another gentleman who was from 1600 Sedgwick Avenue, because I was getting 1600 and 1520 and the park in between, the story of all of that. So we're telling this story of the creation and development of 1520 Sedgwick Avenue and the surrounding area. We're taking it back to the Lapani tribe or nation, the Algonquin-speaking people of the time, the Mohican speaking people as well, native indigenous people to the Bronx land at the time. We're taking it back there, telling that story. What happened? How did the place become the Bronx? Jonas Bronx, or Bronx, Jonas Bronx, swindled the Native American indigenous population out of their land. And it's a deeper story. I'm not speaking about this now, but the word is swindle. There's no other way around it. When you hear the story, you'll come to the same conclusion. But this Jonas Bronx, Dutch man, swindles them out of their land, basically. And what was so wild was that the Native Americans and others were all fighting over land. I think the English and the Native Americans were fighting over land, and it was the Dutch that brokered a treaty between them, a peace treaty between them. But everybody was fighting, okay? And Jonas Bronk is supposed to be the peacemaker who brought peace to this all-out, really revolt against these foreigners coming in to take your land. So he, being a foreigner, somehow broken a peace treaty that only benefited them. We're going to talk about that, Jonas Bronk. We're going to talk about John Sedgwick, the avenue, Sedgwick Avenue, named after John Sedgwick, a Union soldier fighting in the Civil War, Union general fighting in the Civil War. His famous last words were, well, I'm going to paraphrase. I don't have the notes in front of me, but his famous last words, he was standing like they was on a battlefield, and it's like a couple of, like maybe a mile out or so on, several thousand feet away was the enemy, was the Confederate soldiers. And they say that his last final word was he stood up to get readying his men, getting his men ready, and he stood up and he said, from this range, they couldn't hit an elephant. And right when he said that, a bullet went through his head. He dropped. His troops could not believe it because it's right when he said it. A sharpshooter, Confederate sharpshooter, put the bullet through his head. He dropped. That was the end of it. And he was held up as a great general, and so on. And people could not believe. Right when he said that, bullet went through their head. And so it's John Sedgwick. We're going to talk about him. And we're going to talk about that because he was also part of killing the Cherokee Indians as well, and taking Mexican land as well. He was part of those campaigns as well in his earlier days as well. We're going to talk about him as well. So every section of the Bronx, Jonas Bronk, Sedgwick Avenue, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, the building. There's a whole story with the building, how it was built, the slumlords that took it over. They almost burnt it down to get the insurance money as well. They had to get dude out of there. Senator Chuck Schumer was called. He named the place a landmark. I mean, it's another gentleman, Mr. Morris, somehow was able to save the building and get it over to Mr. John Crotty, who is the owner of the building now and who claims to be hip hop. And so these people are struggling to keep their building alive and keep the legacy of hip hop alive. And imagine, it's Senator Chuck Schumer's trying to keep hip hop alive through 1520 Sedgwick Avenue and passed law and legislation too. He bounced the dude out of there. Okay, the slumlord got him out of there. And put the building in charge of somebody who understood what the building's significance was. This is what's going on, and we're going to tell that story. We're going to tell that story. So we were there getting interviews at 1520 the day before yesterday. I keep saying the day before yesterday. Wasn't it yesterday?
No, we were there on Sunday, Saturday, Friday.
I'm bugging. The days are going too fast.
Thursday, we were there.
Thursday, right?
Yeah.
We were there Thursday.
Yeah.
We were there, so and then the stories we captured were so amazing. Stuff you just don't even get to hear. I'll give you a small example. Like, because we're discussing 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, the building. So you know that Rough Riders, the family that would have started Rough Riders, Wah, D, Siobhan, the Dean family would go on to start Rough Rider Records, Swiss Beats, all of this, DMX, Eve, everybody else with Rough Rider. Swiss Beats' father or brother, I'm fresh with the information.
His father.
So say the whole thing. Then.
Well, his father was lived in 1520, and he's the one or that is known to be there and to be one of the DJs actually playing in the parks along 15 or in Cedar and in the park in between, or 1600s park, right in between the two buildings.
Swiss Beats' father. Thank you for that. Swiss Beats' father was with Herc. I mean, did you know? Okay, you can't make this up. So, and a whole bunch of other little stories as well popping out. This one did that. That one was here. This one knew this one. This one helped that one. We're going to tell the story in a documentary, Hip Hop 50 Years. So I say all of this with the first hour of our study today to let you know not only what's going on, but the glory of God as well. I keep saying that. I want to get this done as well. Shout out to Special Ed. Special Ed rung us up. We had a Hip Hop Alliance conference call to which Special Ed mentioned that the violence in the street is just too much. He wanted to get together the members of All in the Same Gang and members of the Stop the Violence movement to get on a call and come up with a solution, come up with a plan for how urban violence can be curbed. What is hip hop's stance on this? That was Special Ed. And look at special education. It's interesting, the whole thing. But he came up with it, Special Ed. And so I jumped on a conference call the other day as well, while we were at 1520. I jumped on a conference call with almost 50 other legendary MCs.
96.
Oh, no, 96. Legendary dudes. It was a private call. So it was all East Coast, West Coast. It was that's what it was. All in the same gang. All the West Coast dudes that had something to do with it. Not all. Most that had something to do with that was on that call. East Coast, we had our people on the call, including Ann Carlin, who's the actual founder of the Stop the Violence movement. So we had this call. It was an amazing call. I opened the call and set the law and said, this is what we're doing. This is what it is. This is what's going down. And then I shut my mouth and everyone responded with, no, this is what's going down. I concur. We need to. Others started talking about other stuff. I started getting into, and the conversation became robust. And it was wonderful to see the unity of hip hop like this. What a magnificent culture we have. Every one of those people on the phone had companies, things they're doing. Many of them knew each other. We all knew each other. I was able to shout out Battle Cat. I did a record with Battle Cat for Snoop way back in the day. And Battle Cat was on the phone. I got a chance to shout him out East Coast to West. It was a beautiful situation to see our culture united like this as adults discussing its future. And everybody's with it. We're all coming into consciousness. So we're going to continue our read of the, I'm on page 665 of the Gospel of Hip Hop. 665, wait a minute, hold on 1 minute. Wait a minute, son one, let me verify with you because I have two, two stops here. Hold on 1 minute.
It was 91.
Oh, 91.
No, what, right, okay, so I'm right. I had another marker in my book for some reason that looked identical to where I had stopped at. I gotta change that.
Yeah, no, it's 665 and 91 is the pickup.
Righteous, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm here. So we're obviously discussing American history. We're discussing history. Last week, we went through what history is really, a record of events. We talked about the past and how to read the past, because human activity in the earth is one event. We call it an omni-event, and we're going to get into that. We call it an omni-event, and this omni-event is unrecordable, really. You have to cut off the beginning of this event and cut off the effects of this event in order to tell a story about anything, because everything is interconnected into the omniness of human activity in the earth. So in order for you to tell a story about the past, you have to pick and choose what part of the omni-event you're going to discuss. So we enter history not as fact and as truth, but we enter history as an agreement as to what the fact, as a matter of fact, not even what the fact, we enter history as an agreement as to what the past is. Because we know we could never be accurate with the past. The past is infinite, just like the future, just like the present. These are infinite conditions. So to discuss your past, even for me to discuss my present moment right now, like if I'm saying to you, let me discuss the history of this particular lecture right here. There's no way, because I'm going to start with, I started off by speaking like this. No. What's the history of the wall behind me? Because I cannot discuss history without this wall behind me. I can't discuss history without this room. I can't discuss what I'm about to discuss without this device, this camera, this computer. So in order for me to discuss the history of this lecture, I have to first talk about the computer and its history and all that went on with it for it to get here. Then I have to discuss my knowledge of the computer and how I got to be on this. Then I have to discuss the room I'm in, the history of the room, possibly the history of the hotel. Then I have to discuss why I got to this room. Like, all of this is part of the history of this particular talk that I'm giving to you right now. If one of these things did not happen, there's no talk. But what am I doing? If I say the history of this talk, the history of this study is, well, KRS-ONE sat down in front of a camera and began to speak. What did I just do? I just cut out all of the reality that got me here. I cut out everything so that I could just get to this piece right here. And when I get up from here and this cuts off, the effects of my words or this teaching will not be discussed. So what you're getting is a slither of reality, and that's what we are calling history, especially when looking at the past. History is an agreement as to what your identity is in the present. What you want your identity to be in the present creates the history you're going to have of your past. Slaves are given their history. Free people create their history. Because history is not a fact. It's a bunch of facts. History is not a truth. It's a bunch of truths. History is an art. And those that know how to work the art work history. What is the art that we work in? Well, first of all, hip-hop's history, at least from a Temple of Hip-Hop perspective, is supposed to empower you. You're supposed to hear the history so that you know who you are and what your role is in the culture. what your powers are in your culture. Sure, you can know who made the culture, who came up with what, the influences of the culture. Sure, there's hundreds of books on this and some really good documentaries. But the knowledge of the temple of hip hop is, how are you empowered by the knowledge that you are receiving of hip hop? How does hip hop's knowledge empower you? Well, here we're talking about history, and the empowerment that we're giving here is for you to open your awareness as to what history is and free your mind from the colonial history you think you have now. 1619, Jamestown, Virginia. You still think that's your history? We caught up, we're reading from 91, and get this, what we're reading, as I said 2 weeks ago, the contradictions in history because of what I just told you. History is not the truth. It's an art. In fact, at best, it's an art. At worst, it's the opinion of the historian. And that's the best we're getting right now, is the opinion of the historian. That's what history is. So when I read you this piece of history within the gospel of hip hop, read and listen with this in mind. We're only getting the opinion of one or two people, but that opinion, what you choose as an opinion, should make you think of other things around the opinion. Okay, this is what happened, but with what I call historical mind, meaning that we don't have a history, we have an oustory, our story. We have an oustory. So with an historical mind, you can see a piece of history and then surround it with what you know had to occur for that history to exist. It is we, I am reading now, it is we to this day who are still instinctively pressing onward toward this vision. What vision? The vision of the United States Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, like these documents, George Washington's farewell address, these documents are supposedly the spirit of America. But what I'm arguing here is that the people that we are accrediting to the writing of these documents are not the original authors of the principles that they are writing, if they're writing them at all. The principles of the United States Constitution was never lived up to by the writers and framers of the Constitution, nor their offspring, posterity, and future government. Nobody, Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting in '63 to get the United States white population to adhere to its own laws. That was the argument. You are contradicting your own laws. What the U.S. Constitution says, you are not doing it. And this argues that the reason why those leaders are not adhering to the U.S. Constitution or to the Declaration of Independence or any of the other documents that are called the Spirit of America is because they're not the Spirit of America. They don't have the character that those documents call for. If you don't have the character, you can't follow that law. That law demands a certain character. And those who just said, oh, this is the Constitution, didn't have the character. So who's the real author? Who's the real author of the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence? You could tell by looking at the character of the document and then looking at the character of those who claim the authorship today. Let's read. It is we to this day who are still instinctively pressing onward toward this vision. As historian John R. Tucker, I explained who Tucker was. This is a direct ascendant of the Tuckers, who's supposed to be the first African-American family, or one of their children, was the first African-American born, first African-American born in North America, I should say. That's who the Tuckers are. But here now, one of the Tuckers. As historian John R. Tucker, descendant of the first African Americans to land at Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, points out, quote, when reading the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, keep in mind the thinking of the founding fathers when it was accepted, such as 29 signers of the Declaration of Independence were men of color. And laws of naturalization were left out of the Constitution. We don't want to be home for the social ills of the old world, the homeless, the starving, unemployables, and hooligans, wrote John Jay to Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, framer of the Constitution, end quote. Mr. Tucker continues, quote, pay special thought on the phrase for us and our posterity. There are 29 men of color in us. And the framer renounces the social ills of the old country. They certainly were not considered posterity, end quote. As Mr. Tucker points out, 29 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were men of color. In fact, Robert E. Lee, the famous general of the Confederate Army, was the grandson of Francis Lightfoot Lee, an African Native American and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. An African Native American and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. This was, according to this writer, Robert E. Lee, famous general of the Confederate Army, was the grandson of Francis Lightfoot Lee, an African Native American, and a signer of the Declaration of Independence, end quote. Mr. Tucker continues, quote, multiculturalism is the civilization of the founding fathers, the universality of man, end quote. In truth, it seems that the spirit of 1776 was our hip-hop spirit, which was then co-opted by British commercial interests and made mainstream by the creation of the United States Constitution, just like hip-hop was. The Declaration of Independence is hip-hop, while the U.S. Constitution is its mainstream rap counterpart, designed to lure people with its own irresistible principles, ways, and views of the world in an attempt to appear civilized and appealing for business to the rest of the world. It's like the Declaration of Independence was the flyer advertisement and the U.S. Constitution was the actual jam party. The Declaration of Independence was like the demo, and the Constitution was like the finished master. The Declaration of Independence was like hip-hop from 1981 to 1991, while the Constitution can symbolize hip-hop from 91 on. The truth is that many free blacks toured the United States with no problems, owned land, owned slaves, and held public offices. However, a very sinister conspiracy seems to have occurred in the United States just after the Civil War that removed Africans in America from public offices within the government by blatantly disregarding their rights as land-owning, tax-paying, and legally elected community leaders, many times with force. As H.M. Turner, president of the Civil and Political Rights Association, said in 1868 at the National Convention of the Colored Men of America just after the Civil War, quote, to the colored voters of Georgia, the rights guaranteed to us by the Constitution of our state and by the Constitution and laws of the United States have been unlawfully and arbitrarily torn from us by one branch of the General Assembly, a body created and established very largely by our votes and that at the risk, in many instances, of starvation and death. Like they starved, was threatened, put their vote forward, put their money forward, and these white folk are cheating them out of their fair share. That's what's happening here. Black folk are part of the U.S. Constitution, part of the writing of it, part of the writing of the Declaration of Independence, part of all of that. But when the history, when the history is told, they just leave us out. They don't say you were not there. They just don't talk about you. So it gives the impression it was only them. But even worse than that, excuse me, even worse than that, we could see in this reading how African Americans and Native Americans and enlightened white folk are getting cheated out of their positions by this racist, ignorant, evil group of people and their allies, Africans and Native Americans as well. This is about what? Character. Let's take a look. The Democratic Party, which was the party of slavery and racism, the Democratic Party, having by refusing the colored members the right to vote, unlawfully obtained a large majority in the House of Representatives, have decided by a mere resolution in defiance of the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state of Georgia that colored men have no right to represent their race in the General Assembly, and have accordingly ejected them from their seats. And this is polite, ejected them from their seats. This is violence, gun to head, blew your head off if you didn't move, hung you, burned your house down. This is what was going on. The Wilmington Lie. There's a book called The Wilmington Lie, which talks just of one incident. Okay, just one incident. You can look at Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can look at Haiti. You can look at all of these incidences where black folk, enlightened white folk, enlightened black folk, and enlightened Native Americans are together governing successful communities. And here comes this other white folk, black folk, and Native American folk bent on taking what they got. Now we have to defend ourselves, and these people who have nothing to lose but to invade and rob and steal can keep wearing away at our defenses. And then when you have a lame government that don't protect your rights or your interests because they got some other interests going and don't want to see you prosper either, now you get this. By this act, they have ignored our rights of citizenship and representation, rights established by the Constitution and laws and recognized by every sound and impartial jurist in the country. End quote. Then, calling together a rally of concerned black men and women, Mr. Tucker concluded by stating, quote, "There can be no doubt that our personal liberty is in a great danger as our civil and political, as our civil and political rights. The same power which would override the Constitution in one thing will do it in another. It is therefore a solemn duty which every colored man owes himself, his family, and his country to maintain his manhood and his right of citizenship." This is coming from 1868. 1868. The ancestor is telling you right when it started to go down what we were supposed to do. Maintain your manhood your dignity, your character, your values, your principles. Maintain your manhood and your right of citizenship. This is, the ancestors said, no, we started the United States of America. You white folk didn't just start this on your own. We were there too with the Declaration of Independence. We were there too with the United States Constitution. We built Washington, D.C. We were there too. But when you tell your story, you don't include us. You take all the glory for yourself. See, this is what the problem is, and this is here. You got to do the digging, of course, to get this, to get to this, okay? And this is the interesting part. The same power which would override the Constitution in one thing will do it in another. So once you have a criminal breaking laws in one area, that you allow that to continue, that's going to keep going until finally we're being lynched in the street. He's telling you what to do right there, right as it's happening. And let's continue, okay? He says, and look what he says, it is therefore a solemn duty. See, this is when black folk felt that America was theirs, because their ancestors built it and told them that. It is therefore a solemn duty which every colored man owes himself, his family, and his country to maintain his manhood and his right of citizenship, end quote. His final advice was this, quote, guard against all disturbances. This is the timeless wisdom. Catch it if you can. Quote, guard against all disturbances, as this is a moral contest, a bloodless battle. Drunkards and fools fight in person. Sober and wise men fight with thoughts and words. End quote. In 1853, Native Americans, Africans, and Irish in America formed the Know Nothing Party. And when liberal voters in the North, some believed to be racist themselves, met in Ripon, Wisconsin, and united with the Know Nothing Party, they formed the Republican Party, also known as the People's Party. Critics of this party called it the Black Republican Party. This new People's Party, made up mostly of the anti-slavery movement, went on to elect a man from Illinois for president. His name was Abraham Lincoln. However, the thirst for power through white racism differed from the business of slavery. Assassinated President Lincoln and began to blatantly disregard the rights and conditions of publicly elected black officials, along with the tax-paying, land-owning black families whom black elected officials represented. So even though Native Americans and Africans helped to establish the Republican Party as the People's Party, unified white racism gradually denied them their rights and rightful places in history, in society, and within the Republican Party itself. Excuse me. Hold on, let me get some water. Oh, sorry. Give me a break for a minute, y'all. As a matter of fact, you know what? Someone jump in here and talk a little just about this real quick while I find this. I got a cooler over here. I got to dig in this ice water and get something to drink real quick. But just pick up the lecture from here. I'll catch up.
Well, hold on. I got a little segment that I can add real quick as a break that I was saving. Oh no! Okay. Here we go. Take y'all into the show yesterday, real fast.
Is it loud enough?
I think we getting there.
Is it loud enough?
I think we getting there.
Yeah, that's how it went down. That's exactly how it went down. And it got even more savage. That's just when we opened up. When the South Bronx came on, it just got all stupid. But thanks for the break. I was able to clear my throat. Let me clear my throat. And so let's continue. Now, remember what we're talking about here. This is how African Americans in particular, but I have to say this because it wasn't just African Americans. It was also, it was anyone who was part of this group that wanted the original spirit of the Declaration of Independence. That group that was white folk, black folk, Native American folk, all kind of folk, was in this group. That group is what got swindled out of their right to power, their right to govern. Our parents were swindled out of their right to govern. They started the nation with others, but then got ripped off along the way as the nation grows and the power is there, the greed, the betrayal. And what are we talking about? You know?
Let me also say, or I was going to come back and say that we had actually already set up many governments ourselves, or once when the war was over, we actually took power or were given seats of power. And then there was a concentrated effort through the way that the government is set up, of which they literally would start moving to different places. Large groups of people would start moving to different places in order to control the voting, in order to get us out of power. And once they got us out of power and would set other people up in those positions, they would then go to another part of the United States and do the same thing. This is where you have the electoral votes and how they took advantage of that in controlling pretty much who gets into office and then who holds it. And they would literally move whole families, or large populations would go from state to state. I believe it started I actually think it started in New York. Went from New York to Pennsylvania, because these were some of the largest controlling powers as far as being able to elect presidents and this, that, and the third. But it wasn't that we weren't governing from the beginning, but once they got us out, then they got us out and started controlling the histories, which make it seem as though we're not there. But you can look this up and find out that no, there was a concentrated effort in order to get those who were not whites and those who did not want to follow that narrative of, you could really say, white supremacy, that they ended up manipulating the system because of the way that it was set up, and thus here we are today. Still,
I'm on page 668, and we talking about getting swindled out of our rightful place in government and in power. Reading a resolution drafted by the colored citizens of Boston in 1856, just 3 years after the birth of the Republican Party, Mr. Julian B. McCrae declared, quote, "Resolved that while we regard the Republican Party as the People's Party, the resolve in the Republican platform endorsing the Kansas Free State Constitution, which prohibits colored men from going into that territory, and the determination of the Republican press to ignore the colored man's interest in the party plainly shows us that it is not an anti-slavery party, and while we are willing to unite with them to resist the aggressions of the slave power, we do not pledge ourselves to go further with the Republicans than the Republicans will go with us, end quote. Several things in that to unpack. Take a look at this real quick. Resolve that while we regard the Republican Party as the People's Party, this is black folk writing, okay, we in the party, okay, in the party, the resolve of the Republican platform, okay, like what now other people are now putting up as the platform, this is Republican, like Trump, you know, you had a Republican Party, then this guy comes and says, this is the new platform. And you have to decide now, am I Republican now anymore? Am I? Well, the same thing's going on here. The resolve in the Republican Party endorsing the Kansas Free State Constitution. So the Kansas Free State Constitution was straight racist and white supremacy. And they endorsed it. A portion of this Republican Party endorsed that. Split the party, obviously. And it says, which prohibits colored men from going into that territory. And here's the other part. Not only did you do that, but the determination of the Republican press. This is the key part. The Republican press. Those who get the word out. Okay? The historians. That's what a journalist is. A historian. Someone taking it down. Where do historians get their knowledge from? Newspapers, articles, clippings. The Republican press, okay, is ignoring the colored man's interest in the party. This is what is key. That it starts off with the press. Fox News, CNN. You want us to be Democrat, but you ignore our interests. You take our vote for granted, which is what a lot of black Democrats, a lot of African Americans are thinking these days. You're taking the vote for granted. Like we just supposed to vote Democrat. Why? Because we black? And so you can see here that the history, you getting moved out of history begins with you getting moved out of the local newspaper. You getting moved out of the local conversation. They just don't talk about your interests. This is why interest is so important, because your stated interest and your documented interest is also your stated existence and the documentation of your existence, at least in history. If your interests are not in history, neither are you. Or someone else's, it'll look like someone else's interests were yours. Come on now. So look at what's being done here. The interest and the determination of the Republican press to ignore the colored man's interest in the party plainly shows us that it is not an anti-slavery party. Boom. The ancestors just spoke. It shows us clearly that this is not an anti-slavery party like we started out with. But now it has changed into white supremacy. Look at what's going on. So they say, plainly shows us, all of this plainly shows us that it is not an anti-slavery party. And while we are willing to unite with them to resist the aggression of the slave power, we do not pledge ourselves to go further with the Republicans than the Republicans will go with us, end quote. And that's the way it's been since 1856. Of course, this view of American history paints a much different picture than that which is promoted and taught today in public education. It seems that the true founders of the United States and their vision, founded first in the name of God, with the primacy of no man over another and all authority given to God, were betrayed, and their posterity, us, was eventually completely overthrown sometime around the end of the Civil War. That's what happened. In fact, let me get my pen out, because that's going to be our first highlight. Let's go ahead and highlight paragraph 107. Because there's a lot said in there. Let me hit you with it one more time. Paragraph 107. Of course, this view of American history paints a much different picture than that which is promoted and taught today in public education. Here it is. It seems that the true founders of the United States and their vision founded first in the name of God, with the primacy of no man over another, and all authority given to God. These principles, this is what it is. This is what it is. Our vision is founded in God. God gave us our vision of peace, love, unity, and joy. Health, love, awareness, and wealth. Not sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty. God gives us the vision of hip-hop. And what is that vision? There's nobody above anybody here. We establish our equality here. The primacy, which is the beginning of this vision, is that no man is over another man. We are all equal here. And finally, the authority is God. The vision comes from God, and the authority of the vision is God. And whether you want to go to your Bible and say it's that, your Quran, your Bhagavad Gita, your Torah, whatever you want to go to say is God, that's the governing principle. That's the principle. God is the principle. And no matter where you come from with your God is the principle. And this, I believe, is why America has had such a difficult time being consistent with its own creeds and principles. It is because those who wound up governing the United States through treachery, treason, murder, and lies seem to also have been morally inadequate to lead a nation founded upon such universal principles as freedom, justice, and equality. Continuing our fight for human rights rests in the fact that the idea of human beings having rights is an idea of our ancestors. Look at it. The idea that human beings have rights, that's the idea of our indigenous ancestors. Because those who claim that human beings had rights in the writings, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and all of that type of stuff, they never acted it out. Their character could not do that, so they could not be the authors of that. Continuing our fight for human rights rests in the fact that the idea of human beings having rights is an idea of our ancestors. Not just Black or Native American ancestors, but enlightened European and Asian American ancestors as well. Our ancestors, all of them, established the United States of America as a multi-skilled, multicultural, multi-faith, multiracial people committed to the establishment and development of peace. Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, Principle 11. We all keep fighting for our rights instinctively because these rights actually belong to us genetically. Freedom, justice, and love. These are our birthrights. Freedom, justice, and love. Imagine you are supposed to live in freedom, justice, and love. That's your birthright. And let me be harsh with you right now. Others, like those who invaded the Americas, their birthright was sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty. Did you hear what I just said? They were born into sickness, born into hatred, born in ignorance, born poor. That's Europe. That's not Africa. That was nowhere in the Americas. That's Europe. Those are the cities in Europe that are going through all of this. Plagues and poverty and war and all types of craziness going on in Europe, which is called the Dark Ages. For Europeans, it's called the Dark Ages. But for the rest of the world, it's the lightest, the brightest time ever. These people whose birthright was sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty invaded those whose birthright was health, love, awareness, and wealth. You don't rob poor people. There's nothing to rob. You rob rich people. And why are you robbing them? Rich people don't rob rich people. I don't have to. Rich people are robbed by poor people or by people who don't have what you have. So you can see in an historical vision who the rich was and who the poor was, who the wealthy was and who was in poverty, who had the knowledge and who didn't. You could see, based on the crime that was committed, who was on top and who was on the bottom. Your birthright, okay, your actual birthright is freedom. Your actual birthright. This is genetic to you. Let me read this one more time. We all keep fighting for our rights instinctively because these rights actually belong to us genetically. Nobody should be telling you your rights. Your rights come from you. You know what's right, and you know what you should be doing. Freedom, justice, and love. These are our birthrights. Our parents already created and established these rights for the governing of our nations. But if we are unwilling to live our own birthright, then whose fault is it when we are enslaved? Our ancient tribes were already prepared to unite for the creation of a new people, and many enlightened whites were part of that vision as well. But this is how it has always been. As far as the landmass America is concerned, this is the place where the new tribe was predicted to be born. As French farmer J. Hector St. John D. Creviture, American colonies before settling, Creviture, my French is horrible in that sense, observed in his travels throughout the American colonies before settling in New York in the early 1770s. Quote, Americans are disposed races of men. Now keep in mind, this is a guy, a historian, somebody, he's also here at the beginning of America. Now keep in mind, I want you to remember this, because the same people who are against Mexican immigration, against any kind of non-white immigration, you got to call it what it is. Those who are acting out like this, those governors and senators and mayors that are acting like human beings can't be sheltered in your city. These are these people, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents came to this country the same exact way. They came on ships, crossed borders, but they were welcomed by the racist government America was at the time. And we could see the blatant racism. It's in our face. Now look, when these white racists, white supremacist racists who are talking this bullshit today, the way they got in the country, okay, this guy here is explaining it. He's saying, this is who these people actually were, okay? These new things called Americans. This guy's explaining it. These are the facts, okay? Here it is. Quote, Americans are disposed races of man who had found land, livelihood, and liberty without primacy of one man over another, regardless of previous nationality. You see? Before this, your nationality determined your status. And millions of white people, if you from Italy, get out of here. You from Greece, get out of here. You from Hungary and the Czech Republic and Poland and all that, get out of here. You Irish, get with the dogs. This is what French and English imperialism was doing to the rest of Europe, okay, and Germans, as well as we come into Adolf Hitler's time and all of that. This is the mentality. This is the mentality of these people. The same people talking this bullshit today. This is their parents. Okay? This is their parents. It says, let me read this one more time. Quote, Americans are disposed races of man who had found land, livelihood, and liberty without primacy of one man over another, regardless of previous nationality. Here, individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men, a new people. End quote. This is the vision of our ancestors, though. Okay? This is the vision of our ancestors. And this is what I have always understood hip-hop to be. Everyone coming together for the common cause of sustaining and advancing the human spirit. Let's highlight that. We're highlighting paragraph 113, highlighting paragraph 113. Let me take you also to 114. Go ahead and highlight 113 and 114. You'll see it right now. You'll see why right now. This is the vision of our ancestors. And this is what I have always understood hip-hop to be. Everyone coming together for the common cause of sustaining and advancing the human spirit. When you instinctively feel that peace, love, unity, and safely having fun is the normal state of humanity, that such virtues are actually your birthright, then you are indeed a citizen of the king's dream, the true kingdom of heaven, the hip-hop nation. Highlight all of that. Reading on paragraph 15. We, the genetic keepers of this vision, are the only ones who sincerely believe fundamentally that, quote, all men, all nature are created equal, and that created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, gifts, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, end quote. We are the only ones, regardless of racial ethnicity or social class status, who believe that, quote, to secure these rights, governments, tribes, are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall deem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That is the Declaration of Independence. And notice the word abolish. Let me hit you with this one more time for the argument of abolish the police. They don't want to hear that. Nobody want to talk that, okay? That's a no-no on the campaign trail. But here it is in the Declaration of Independence. It says that whenever any form of government, did you hear that part? This is in the Declaration of Independence. This is the spirit of the United States of America. This is supposed to be the spirit. That it is, that whenever any form of government, which is the police, is a form of government, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, meaning, what is it? Wait a minute. The destructive life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When any part of government becomes destructive toward your life, your liberty, or your pursuit of what makes you happy, here's what is said by our ancestors. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Don't argue with me, argue with the Declaration of Independence. This is it right here. It is the right of the people. When you go against my life, my liberty, and my pursuit of happiness, like the police are doing, we have the right to abolish them. I don't care what you like. I don't care what you feel about my words. I'm reading the principles of the country itself. But see, we're not interested in truth. We're living in a country where truth don't matter. Joe Biden's not the president. I can just say that. And all of a sudden, he ain't the president. Now I got 70 million people saying, oh, the election was stolen. Because we don't want to hear no truth. You don't want to go by no facts. Nothing is the authority. Nothing means anything. And everything is everything. So nothing is anything. This is how we gonna live? This is how hip-hop is supposed to live. I don't think so. I got something else on my mind. Let's read on. Abolish it. Okay. When you start going against my life, my liberty, my pursuit of happiness, I got the right to alter you. Alter. Okay, let's fix you. Let's figure you out. Or abolish you. And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles as life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and organizing its powers in such form to offer that, as to them shall deem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. You have the right to set up your own government to protect your happiness and your security. You have the right to do that. But we're not exercising those rights because we don't have the character to do that. See, you have to live in a community that respects life, another person's liberty and freedom, and that person's pursuit of their own happinesses. You have to be tolerant of other people. The pursuit of happiness means I want to pursue my happiness, and you pursue your happiness, as long as we're not killing each other, as long as our happiness doesn't take away our lives and our liberty. If you happy killing, you can't be down with us, because we're about life. If you happy with jail and prison and all that, you can't be with us. Why? We're happy about, we're trying to get liberty. We're practicing freedom, and I don't want you to have to give up your freedom or have your freedom taken away, and I don't want mine taken away. Thus, we have an agreement here. I respect your life and your beating heart. You respect my life and my beating heart. We have an agreement here. You pursuing your happiness, whatever your happiness is, and if it's personal to you, that's you, my G. That's you. Do you? Because check it out, I'm going to do me. And I don't want nobody telling me nothing about me. So what I'm telling you about you, your pursuit of happiness. Why can't we live like this? And notice how simple the ancestors' laws are. Life, liberty, happiness. So similar to health, love, awareness, wealth. You don't need but 5 laws. You don't need but 3. The ancestors are even doper than we are. We got health, love, awareness, and wealth. They say, Chris, come on down to just life, liberty, and happiness. Somebody else will probably just be like, boom. Like something, love. That's all you need. John Lennon. They just boom. One law, love. That's the only law we got. Yeah, we don't even need two laws. There are three. We just got one. And we live on that high level of one law. Can you imagine? The more laws a society has, the more corrupt it is. The less laws a society has, the less corrupt it is. Don't we want to rise to the level of an incorruptible, crimeless society? That's the vision we're looking for. Incorruptible, crimeless society, where the principles of the Declaration of Independence are actually acted out. The character is actually performed. Let's read on. With or without government, with or without a constitution, with or without a religious institution, these are the innate ideas of our being. This is who we are, and this is how we naturally act. And it is our being, our act, our character that creates our form of civilization. This is why we fight for our rights, not because we are owed them, but because they belong to us. They are part of our character, our being, our birthright, our unalienable rights complete us. We fight for the existence of right, not that we may be granted our due rights. That's stupid. We fighting for rights because you're holding back our rights. Nah, that's ignorant. We're fighting for rights because we own them. And in fact, if you know that what we are calling rights, let's say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if you know that that's your birthright, you don't have to fight for it. Just express it. So another person doesn't want to respect your life, your liberty, or your pursuit of happiness. That's their problem. Because I will pull out and bust your ass straight up to defend my life, my liberty, and my sense of happiness. You ain't taking nothing from me. Now others, okay, you don't know that life, liberty, and happiness is your birthright. You don't know that. So somebody comes along and bullies you or tries to do something to take away your liberty, you allow it. And that's what's happening to people out here. They are allowing their dignity and their sense of character, their self-respect even, their duty to community to be snatched down and taken from them. Now you ain't got no citizenship rights. Why? Because you don't have the character of a citizen. If you had the character of a citizen, you would have your citizenship rights. But if you don't have the character of a citizen, how are you supposed to? If you're not the king in character, you can't wear the crown. Somebody can put a crown on your head, but if you ain't the king, it's going to fall off. You don't have the crown. It's the character that determines what you are and what you're going to get. So, and again, you know, this is what we are impressing in this particular lesson. Who really wrote the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution and these ideas of what America really is? Who really wrote that? And who really is expressing it? Again, I always say, Dr. King, the I Have a Dream speech, you only see it in hip hop. Well, it might be that you only see the Declaration of Independence in hip hop as well. The attitude of the Declaration of Independence, you only see it in hip hop. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's all hip hop. Even those who claim, like militia groups and white supremacists and all of that, they're not about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because you're trying to take mine. You setting up laws. You're not setting up laws for my life, for my freedom. You're setting up laws to take my life, take my freedom, take my citizenship rights. You don't want me to have nothing. So who's the real sovereign? Who's the real citizen of this nation? And this is what hip hoppers are going to have to start to think about. Who is the real citizen of this nation? And if we are the true citizens of the United States, then let us start acting like citizens. Let us know what the Constitution says, know what the Declaration of Independence says, and let us know what our ancestors said to cause those documents to exist. See, the more we don't act like citizens, the more the police can act like we're not citizens and get away with it. The minute you start acting like a citizen and commanding them to do their job, now you have the power. Now you have a direction. But what's happening? We're not united. We're not at peace. Nobody loves anybody. And so we're not having no fun. We're living in sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty. How can you form a nation? How can you form any governance? How can you get from under the oppression of other nations if you yourself are sick, hateful, ignorant, and constantly in poverty? By your own doing, too, by the way. You do this to yourself and then expect others not to take advantage of you, not to take advantage of that weakness. Well, this is what's going on. Others see our weaknesses and they're taking advantage of it. That's why they can be all cultures are in the Black community, but the Black community ain't in no cultures. You go to their culture, you don't see Black people serving food, selling shit, doing stuff in their neighborhood. But you come to our neighborhood, we got a multiracial, multi-faith, and we have nothing. We're not even the ones selling in our own neighborhoods, which is why hip hop needs its own space. We don't even have a neighborhood that we can sell our goods out of. Yet everybody from China to Italy, Greece, you name it, they're all in the Black community, serving up pizza, serving up fried rice, serving up clothes and other stuff that they can make, and tools and stuff, and we sit there buying it, never thinking that didn't you create clothes? Didn't you create the concept of food itself? Didn't you come up with cooking? But now we're the slaves of others that took our talents and sell it back to us now. Come on, y'all. Come on. Nothing I'm saying here is a lie. Nothing. And therefore, if it's the truth, let us react to it. We fight for the existence of right, not that we may be granted our due rights, but so that such rights may exist in the world for all people. We are the front lines for the protection, preservation, and promotion of right. We have always defended what is fundamentally right. In truth, we, those who sincerely seek peace, love, unity, and having fun, are the world's true civilizers. And in a lot of ways, the world is the way it is because we have forgotten who we are. I can't impress this enough. History seems to tell us that our ancestors, the original founders of the American idea, of the American idea, our ancestors, were simply overthrown, not just by the hypocrisies of their own population, but also, and in a larger part, by the even newer white immigrant population from Europe with better technology. It seems that our enlightened ancestors discovered a spiritual way to live beyond the confinement of tribal loyalty. But the individual populations of their tribes didn't agree and began to discredit and disrespect the warnings and teachings of their own tribal leaders. We talked about this, how nations fall. First, you disrespect your teacher. Second, the enemy comes in. Teacher's gone now. Teacher protected himself. Revolution only works for those that participate. So the teacher says, yo, they're coming, and here's what we got to do to protect ourselves. Oh, man, fuck you. You some out of Christ mania. You think you somebody. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this, y'all. Y'all do that. Now Christopher Columbus comes, wipes out half of y'all, enslaves the other half of y'all. Now you're crying out for the teacher. Now you're reaching for the books. Now you want to now know. It's too late. You're already a slave. Wait for Harriet Tubman some 200 years later. This is what has happened to hip hop right now. We're living it straight through right now. Right now. God is great because God has shown us, the temple of hip hop, how to avoid the mistakes of our ancestors. How to avoid the mistakes of our ancestors. So we got right down to the work. We got right down to the work. And look at this. Look at this. It seems that our enlightened ancestors discovered a spiritual way to live beyond the confinement of tribal loyalty, but the individual populations of their tribes didn't agree. Okay, didn't agree. This is that word again, agreement. Didn't agree and began to discredit and disrespect the warnings and teachings of their own tribal leaders. This led to the infighting and betrayal that caused foreign forces to invade and enslave such people. Neither early white immigrant settlers nor their children came up with the pillars and principles of American government and society. So when they arrived in the United States, they immediately brought the ways of the old country to the new country and seized upon the infighting, greed, and betrayal already going on amongst the populations of our ancestors. Our ancestors saw this all coming, and many escaped the horrors that we read about today. Newly arriving European immigrants learned and adopted some of our ways, but they were basically here for the fortune they believed they could make in America, just like hip-hop is treated today. And in ignorance, they attempted to practice our principles in their own way amongst themselves as a free, whites-only society. And proof of this is in the way in which the majority of immigrant whites have conducted themselves socially and politically within the recent history of the United States, thinking that they may be the lowest piece of white trash amongst their own. But in America, they were still better than the wisest and most honorable black. This formed a whites-only society as European immigrants sought to get all they could from the United States that enlightened blacks, whites, and natives built. Again, French farmer J. Hector St. John de Quevecoeur points out this fact in the description of early European immigrants settling in the United States. This is who these, look at who, everybody talking that immigrant bullshit. Here's their parents. Quote, he writes, quote, whence came all these people? Like, where all these people come from? Whence came all these people? They are a mixture of English, Scotch, Irish, French, Dutch, Germans, and Swedes. From this promiscuous breed, that race now called Americans have arisen. In Europe, they were as so many useless plants. They were like useless plants, is what he's saying. Wanting vegetative mold and refreshing showers. They were like plants in need of mold and water and light. They withered and were moved down by want. They withered and were mowed down by want, hunger, and war. But now, by the power of transplantation, like all other plants, they have taken root and flourished. Formerly, they were not membered in any civil list of their country. Did you hear that? Formerly, they were not numbered in any formal list of their country, except in those of the poor. Here, they are ranked as citizens, end quote. So, America took, again, the most ignorant, marginalized, poorest people, desperate people, brought them to America, told them they were better than the black people and the Native Americans already here. These immigrants start Jewish mafias, Italian mafias, Irish mafias. The drive-by shooting is created by the Italian mafia. The crime rate skyrockets. Mass murders of police officers and officials, and you know the mafia story, the Godfather and the whole. It's American entertainment now. The amount of violence and the corruption when these people's parents landed in the United States. Many of them joined the Klan. Come on now, this is American history, and that's what we're discussing right now, American history. But guess who these people were in their own homeland? They weren't shit. And literally, and I'm not saying it's slang, you wasn't shit. You was less than bullshit in your own land. Bullshit, which is a fertilizer, was worth more than you. The guy says, he said, they were in want of vegetative mold. Like, you know, when you plant plants or any seed or whatever, you got to put some fertilizer with it. Some use rotten vegetables. Some use cow manure, which is actually bullshit. You use that to make the plants grow. Or they used to, at least. You know, make the plants grow. They said this is what they was comparing these people to. All these people who now their children and grandchildren are now saying nobody else should come to America the same way my parents just came, and they was hungry, broke, starving, ignorant, and was unwanted by their country and was getting mowed down too. America took them in because they was white. Period. Gave them everything. Now they telling other black people, you can't come in the country. Do you think that's right? Is that just? Is that even logical? Like, just logic. And then to go further with it, to go even further, not only were you given everything, you didn't do nothing with it. Look at the country. We ain't living no better. It ain't like you came here and made the place better. And we Africans sitting back going, wow, this shit was, this is high. This is dope. It was like this and now it's like this. Yo, that's dope. You immigrants came in and made this shit hot. That ain't what happened. They came in and raped the whole country. That's what happened. That's why they're afraid if somebody else comes in, they're going to do the same thing. And that's what desperate people do. They come in and rob and steal and rape and pillage because you're desperate. The idea is to take the desperateness off you with kindness and charity. The desperateness comes off you. Now I have to start building your character because I'm building your sense of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I can start building your character. You're secure here. No one's going to harm you here. You can be fed here. Medical equipment is here. Medicine is here. Knowledge is here. We want you to be better. We want you to prosper. Now, if you break the law in that kind of society, you deserve to be shot on the spot, straight up, because you bugging. Or a doctor is supposed to come. Make it a little more palatable. A doctor comes, not a police officer, a psychiatrist, and says, what the fuck is wrong with you? We live in paradise. Why are you trying to fuck it up? And sticks you with some shit to sedate you. There's other ways to deal with crime. Okay, there's all kind of other ways. Not this cop thinking everybody's a criminal, sitting there in a black vehicle or some other kind of color that's intimidating you even when you've done no crime. You're just driving and I got to see this man with a gun and all types of shit looking at me. What kind of society, what kind of government is this? That's what we as hip hop should be looking at. Can we govern better? I think we can. So a whites-only society would have been fine for newly arriving European immigrants if the true founders of the United States hadn't adopted such universally sound principles. You see, one thing that the newly arriving European immigrants did not seem to learn was that you can steal and plagiarize all the things of the material world except for virtue and righteousness, which are not of the material world. You have to have spiritual hands to grab spiritual ideas. But as all parties would learn, the adoption of such universal principles as freedom, justice, and equality requires an understanding of universal mind. It requires a personal character that reflects the universality of such adopted and established principles. Founding a nation upon the laws of nature and of nature's God obligates those founders and their posterity to be consistent with the known will of that God and the cycles of that God's nature. Calling upon the protection of divine providence and pledging your life, your fortunes, and your sacred honor to the cause of establishing a truly free nation cannot be exchanged for the great wealth, power, and prestige that comes with the establishment of such a nation. This is what real America has always been about: peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. These principles have no color and belong to no race or ethnicity of people. And this is what has always divided the United States, a nation made up of immigrants. Most of us truly seek peace and truth, but the greedy ambitions of some of us always seem to hinder the progress of all of us. The protection of divine providence requires a relationship with divine mind, God. It requires a harmony with the evolution of nature itself. The closer we get to accurately imitating the ways of nature and that of nature's God, the closer we shall arrive at a more perfect union as a nation. But the American leadership that was to come after the true founders of the United States never seemed to understand that if you want God to keep a covenant with you, then you must keep your covenants, contracts, and treaties with others, including God. Yes, God did bless the United States of America in the beginning, but newly arriving immigrants did not understand nor return such a blessing to God when they arrived. Although many today do not want to admit it, the plain old truth is that the United States of America is a Christian nation founded upon the original Christian principles of love, truth, and freedom, as John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, so famously stated, quote, "Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers," end quote. George Washington, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, John Quincy Adams, and many others were men of spiritual insight, but even they contradicted the timeless principles and virtues of the Christian Bible in exchange for the material promises of science and commerce. The point, however, is that the true founders of the United States may have been a deeply spiritual people with an unwavering faith in their cause and their God, but the American population and the leadership that was to come after them have totally contradicted the intended principles of America's true founders and the order that supernaturally governs the United States, and everyone race-wise is guilty. Blacks, whites, Native, Asians, Hispanics, Arabs, Hindus, everyone is guilty. You see, slavery was not about black people subservient to white people, as has been taught all throughout American history. Slavery was about social status, education, and property. Anyone could own a slave if they could afford it. So separate from, actually, wow, you know what? Let me make a note here. I just read that. I said anyone could own a slave. I'm sorry, anyone could own a slave if one could afford, I should say one, not it. Mark that as error. Instead of it, put one. Anyone could own a slave if one could afford one. Separate from white racism, slavery was simply the way things got done in the early days. It was business as usual. Freedom has always been for sale in the United States, even amongst some Africans and Native American tribes. In 1862, Congress abolished slavery in Washington, D.C., and paid 7 colored residents $5,978.20 in compensation for 26 slaves. French African plantation owners in 1814 owned white slaves. Native Americans also kept black and white slaves. West African kings, from the very beginning of the whole slave trade, sold their captives as slaves to the highest bidder. In fact, many countries are still trafficking slaves even to this day. Historian John R. Tucker writes, quote, "To understand the magnitude of the economy of the Confederacy in 1814, the Spaniards in South Florida held an equipment sales convention in Pensacola, Florida, and some 20,000 African and original people, landowners, were in attendance. 20,000 Africans and landowners, no slaves here, were in attendance. These were not slaves. Most were slave owners, and many of them owned white men and women as slaves. This is the point. Everyone had a hand in the creation and sustainment of the institution of slavery in America. Everyone, all races, sought to subdue and betray their neighbor for financial and political gain, in direct contradiction of the fact that the United States was founded upon the principle of no man over another man. And such an activity even continues today. In fact, it seems that history is repeating itself again with the events of the rap music industry. Can you see it? We allow ourselves to be exploited as a group because of our own exploitation of one another. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a spiritual decree. And only a free mind would want such a thing. Why would greedy slave-owning capitalists want freedom and justice for all? Look at these words closely. Has the leadership of the United States lived up to these words? Have America's radio and television programmers lived up to these words? Every time a nation says one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, they themselves are held to that which they have decreed. To receive such a decree, you must be willing to exercise such a decree toward others. Unity, loyalty, God, righteousness, freedom, knowledge, justice, rule of law, etc. are all the governing principles of the ancients. And it is these principles that all American citizens have betrayed. African, European, Asian, Hindu, Arab, Hispanic, Native American, everyone. Everyone is responsible for how the United States of America has turned out. As we will see, the true political contest is not between black and white. It is between good and evil. It is between educated and uneducated. It is between the godly and the worldly, the faithful and the fearful, the aware and the ignorant, the real and the fake. True American history reveals a true world order of peace, love, unity, and safely having fun amongst all people. True American history reveals the stories of brave white abolitionists, interracial love, white slaves, not indentured servants, black and Native American slave owners, and a continuous civil war between the good and the evil. Sometimes it's even between the evil and the evil. Race as equivalent to our struggles for freedom, race as relevant to our struggles for freedom, justice, and equality is an illusion. Race loyalty as a strategy toward lasting peace and uninterrupted prosperity is also an illusion. You either stand for freedom, justice, and equality as a person, or you contradict these principles as a person. As H. Rap Brown has pointed out, quote, "We must learn that black is not a color, but the way you think. If we are to succeed in the struggle, We must eliminate the significance that we have assigned to color in our community. Among Black people, color can have no value, no significance. Commitment will determine the value of individuals, end quote. Stop there. Let us make our mark here. This will conclude this read, because we're now getting ready to go into another piece here. We're getting ready to talk about the character of the original Christian. We're getting ready to talk about, meaning the original American Christian, the Bible toter, this kind of thing. We're getting ready to talk about the character of white people, okay? Not that evil bullshit we get on TV, but real white folk fighting for freedom, justice, and equality. They too, their voices are wiped out as well. We don't get to hear anything about Laura Haviland. We don't hear about Susan B. Anthony often either. We don't hear about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Brewster Stanton and all of these, William Lord Garrison and all of these people. We don't get to hear about them at all. John Browns and so on. You get a little piece. Maybe their name will come up every once in a while. But the significance of what they did and what they were fighting for, that's not told. Because if you get an idea as to what they were really fighting for, you'll see that this whole black, white, red, yellow, all this is bullshit. And it's holding us back. Hip hop has to rise above that. We know that race doesn't exist. It's made up by immigration and racism. Science came up with this. Military people came up with this. Like colonists and immigration came up with this. This is silly. Hip hop has to be able to think past this if we're going to create a truly great nation and return the principles of our ancestors to our lives. Like I always say, this is the Temple of Hip Hop. I am KRS-ONE. The Temple of Hip Hop is a hip hop preservation ministry, archive, school, and society. We believe that to preserve hip hop, you got to preserve the hip hopper. This is what it is. I got a show tonight, so I'm jumping off. I'm gonna run over, see what's going on. Shout out to Cypress Hill as well. Big up to New York. I'm in New York. Sublime. What?
The performance tonight, Sublime.
Oh, Sublime is on as well. Oh, okay, big up to Sublime. Wow. I know because the KRS-ONE. Ooh, and I know. I hope they do that song actually tonight. Maybe I'll get it. Wow, what are they actually going on? We got to get over there. But anyway, remember your duty. That's the point to this lesson today. Your character. Is your character really about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Or those are just words to you, like they were to the founders who could say that and then enslave our ancestors and push out others from political and governmental power? Think about yourself in that. Think about the citizenry of your own self, the character of your own self in a hip hop nation. I'm out. KRS-ONE. I will turn this over to Minister Son One, and thank you all. Peace and love.
Peace and love, G. All right, I'm gonna read this article real quick, and then I'm gonna be out too because I gotta be out too. It's called Wilmington, 1898, when white supremacists overthrew a U.S. government. And there's Leilani. It says following state elections in 1898.
Hey, Dad.
Sweetheart.
Let's see my fish tank.
Yes, I'll go see your fish tank in a minute. Following state elections in 1898, white supremacists moved into the U.S. port of Wilmington, North Carolina, then the largest city in the state. They destroyed Black-owned businesses, murdered Black residents, and forced the elected local government, a coalition of white and Black politicians, to resign en masse. Let me say that again. They destroyed Black-owned businesses, murdered Black residents, and forced the elected local government, a coalition of white and Black politicians, to resign en masse. Historians have described it as the only coup in U.S. history. Its ringleaders took power the same day as the insurrection and swiftly brought in laws to strip voting and civil rights from the state's black population. They faced no consequences. So again, mind you, this is 1898. The way things are now, even with our voting rights, is not the way they were back then, following the end of the Civil War. Wilmington's story had been thrust into the spotlight after a violent mob assaulted the U.S. Capitol on the 6th of January. This is why they wrote this article, seeking to stop the certification of November's presidential election result. More than 120 years later, after its insurrection, the city is still grappling with its violent past. After the end of the U.S. Civil War in 1865, which pitted the Northern Unionist states against the Southern Confederacy, slavery was abolished throughout the newly reunified country. Politicians in Washington, D.C. passed a number of constitutional amendments granting freedom and rights to former slaves and sent the army to enforce their policies. But many Southerners resented these changes. In the decades that followed the Civil War, there were growing efforts to reverse many of the efforts aimed at integrating the freed Black population into society. Wilmington in 1898 was a large and prosperous port with a growing and successful Black middle class. Undoubtedly, African Americans still face daily prejudice and discrimination. Banks, for instance, would refuse to lend Black people or would impose punishing interest rates. But in the 30 years after the Civil War, African Americans in former Confederate states like North Carolina were slowly setting up businesses, buying homes, and exercising their freedom. Wilmington was even home to what was thought to be the only Black daily newspaper in the country at that time, the Wilmington Daily Record. Also, let me point out, TEACHA had mentioned earlier about having newspapers. And for those who do follow the Black plight, know that having your own press and your own newspaper was a big thing for Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, and even today with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Those our records through their publications, you'll at least get some other side of the story, which is important. So to know that the Final Call is an important newspaper to keep record of. I'm sorry, what it was called for Elijah. I think it was Muhammad Speak or Elijah Speaks. I have to do research into that. When Elijah Muhammad ran the Nation of Islam. Continuing on, African Americans were becoming quite successful. Yale University history professor Glenda Gilmore told the BBC they were going to universities, had rising literacy rates, and had rising property ownership. And keep in mind also, this is from the BBC. This is on bbc.com. TEACHA also talks about how you need to go to other countries to really get another better side of the story, to be able to get the things that, again, the United States to this day is embarrassed about things like this, and they don't want people to know really what was going on. So, continuing, this growing success was true across the state of North Carolina, not just socially, but politically. In the 1890s, a Black and white political coalition known as the Fusionists, I'll say that again. In the 1890s, a Black and white political coalition known as the Fusionists, which sought free education, 1890s, sought free education, debt relief, and equal rights for African Americans, won every statewide office in 1896, including the governorship. By 1898, a mix of black and white fusionist politicians had been elected to lead the local city government in Wilmington. But this sparked a huge backlash, including from the Democratic Party. In the 1890s, the Democrats and Republicans were very different to what they are today. Republicans, the party of President Abraham Lincoln, favored racial integration after the U.S. Civil War, and strong government from Washington, D.C. to unify the states. But Democrats were against many of the changes to the U.S. They openly demanded racial segregation and stronger rights for individual states. Think of the Democratic Party of 1898 as the party of white supremacy. LaRae Umfleet, state archivist and author of A Day of Blood, a book about the Wilmington insurrection, told the BBC. Democratic politicians feared that the fusionists, which included black Republicans as well as poor white farmers, would dominate the elections of 1898. Party leaders decided to launch an election campaign based explicitly on white supremacy and to use everything in their power to defeat the fusionists. It was a concerted, coordinated effort to use the newspapers, speech makers, and intimidation tactics to make sure the white supremacy platform won the election in November 1898, Ms. Umfleet said. White militias, including a group known as the Red Shirts, so named for their uniforms, rode around on horseback attacking black people and intimidating would-be voters. When black people in Wilmington tried to buy guns to protect their property, they were refused by white shopkeepers, who then kept a list of those who sought weapons and ammo. Newspapers, meanwhile, spread claims that African Americans wanted political power so they could sleep with white women, and made up lies about rape epidemic. When Alexander Manley, owner and editor of the Wilmington Daily Record, published an editorial questioning the rape allegations and suggesting that white women slept with black men of their own free will, it enraged the Democratic Party and made them the target of a hate campaign. The day before the statewide election in 1898, Democratic politician Alfred Moore Waddell gave a speech demanding that white men do your duty and look for black people voting. And if you find one, he said, tell him to leave the polls, and if he refuses, shoot him down in his tracks. We shall win tomorrow if we have to do it with guns. The Democratic Party swept to victory in the state elections. Many voters were forced away from polling stations at gunpoint or refused to even try to vote for fear of violence. But the fusionist politicians remained in power in Wilmington. With the municipal election not due until the next year, 2 days after the state election, Waddell and hundreds of white men armed with rifles and a Gatling gun rode into town and set the Wilmington Daily Record building alight. They then spread through the town, killing black people and destroying their businesses. The mob swelled with more white people as the day went on. As black residents fled into the woods outside the town, Waddell and his band marched to the city hall and forced the resignation of the local government at gunpoint. Waddell was declared mayor that same afternoon. It was a full-blown rebellion, a full-blown insurrection against the state government and the local government, Professor Gilmore said. Within 2 years, white supremacy in North Carolina imposed new segregation laws and effectively stripped black people of their vote through a combination of literacy tests and poll taxes. The number of registered African American voters reportedly dropped from 125,000 in 1896 to about 6,000 in 1902. Again, African American voters reportedly dropped from 125,000 in 1896 to about 6,000 in 1902. Black people in Wilmington, excuse me, Black people in Wilmington didn't think that something like this would ever happen, Professor Gilmore said. There was a Republican governor in the state. Their congressman was a black man. They thought that things were actually getting better, but part of the lesson about it was that as things got better, white people fought harder. Deborah Dix Maxwell is president of the local branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, in Wilmington. Born and raised in the town, she didn't learn about the attack until she was in her 30s. It was actually, you know what? I'm gonna actually stop there. I think you guys get the point, and it is almost over. Again, you can see this, excuse me, on BBC.com. Wilmington, 1898, when white supremacists overthrew a U.S. government. So again, this is to show you that they just moved in, and or anywhere where we were gaining life, really, or gaining any type of political power, taking any type of offices, they quickly moved to make sure that that wasn't possible. And let's keep it real, there weren't many others who felt otherwise to come to the defense of us either. So, and to know that, and then thus set the trend from there for over 120 years, as we are now, or 130 years even. So, and of course we made some stride, kinda. But really, no. Take a look at what it is, and what we're going through, and what we have to overcome, and why the hip hop city is so important. Why do we want to be sovereign? Why do we want our own chance to govern? Because again, many things aren't different in this day that we live in right now. So you could say if you've had 130 years to get something right, shout out to the 130 people here watching. If you had 130 years to get things right, and we're still dealing with craziness, still being shot down in the streets, still electing racist politicians and this, that, and the third, police department riddled with racism, enough is enough. We just want our own, and for you to leave us alone. And we're not gonna make the same mistakes, or like, again, they were trying to get guns on that day. We're not gonna make the same mistakes again. We'll protect ourselves as necessary. We don't believe in that. We're higher in mind and spirit, and we don't believe in violence like that. But again, we also understand that in order to stop the violence, things may have to happen. But either way, hopefully the times are different, of which, no, you can allow, well, we're not trying to take away your stuff from you. You can do all the violence you want in your own city, and have all the corruption that you could ever imagine and want to yourselves. You can do that. We'll start something righteous, and something that the people can flourish and actually benefit from. So with that, we're going to head on over to this show. Peace and much love to everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week. Anything that's on your heart, that's weighing down on you, know and understand it's just a moment. Things will get better. If you're in need of financial stability, practice on your skills. If your skills, if the current skills you don't have aren't bringing you in what you need, learn and seek out some new skills and use those. But the mastery of hip hop is a very, very lucrative way in order to getting yourself out of poverty. This is who we are. So again, the mastery of your skill can help you, and the mastery of our principles that's laid down in the gospel of hip hop will literally change your reality. Peace and much love. I am Minister Sun One, and this is the Temple of Hip Hop. Peace.